Hello, guys, and welcome once again. My name is Joe Mars, and today it's a very beautiful day. It is a very important day for a lot of radio journalists out there. It is the World Radio Day 2021, and the entire world is celebrating the medium of radio, its birth and its uniqueness in this ever changing world, and of course, the future of radio. Where are we headed? How does it look, and what does it look like? Of course, this is the 10th edition of these celebrations. They were proclaimed in 2011 by the member states of UNESCO and adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 2012 as an international day. February 13 became World Radio Day. And we are so excited as radio heads, as radio lovers, wherever, because you know what? Radio is a powerful medium for celebrating humanity and all its diversity. It is a very good medium that we love so much for democratic discourse. You know, at the global level, radio remains the most widely consumed medium. This unique ability to reach out to the widest audience means radio can shape a society's experience of diversity, stand as an arena of all voices to speak out, be represented, and heard. Radio stations should be striving to serve diverse communities right now more than ever, offering a wide variety of programs, viewpoints, and content, and reflect the diversity of audiences in their organizations and operations. So we are going by the hashtag World Radio Day and hashtag New World New Radio. And of course, this edition is divided into three main sub themes, that is evolution, innovation, and connection. Evolution, talking about the world changes, radio evolves, and the sub theme refers to the resilience of the radio to its sustainability. And of course, innovation, adapting to new technologies to remain as the go to medium of mobility, accessible everywhere and to everyone. Connection, highlighting the radio's service to our society, natural disasters, and socio-economic um, a socio-economic crisis. And as the world celebrates this wonderful day, I'm reminded of how it all started for me. I mean, how it's going and what the future looks like for radio on a personal level. Along my journey with radio, I've met some fantastic human beings and radio heads, just like me, who love radio to bits. These are people that have shaped me and contributed to my love of radio and all its subsidiaries, such as podcasts, which is a big thing now, but a child of terrestrial radio that we all know and love. So I am joined on this wonderful celebration podcast with former Sport FM radio presenter, development media practitioner, working to share women's stories on all aspects of development and their access to services um, such as education, health, social amenities, using a media-based platform called Amakosikazi Media, and based in Bulawayo, where she's the editing director. Wusi Ndlovu, welcome to the podcast, Wusi. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Joe. I'm now Busi Baby, remember?
Yes. Wusi Bebe. You don't even want the double barrel.
No, I don't mind the double barrel. I really
Oh,
don't mind. But things have changed. Just to know that things have changed, things have evolved. Not just radio, but we too have evolved somehow.
yeah, true. Also joining me is the information and communication manager for Forestry Commission, now a part-time producer presenter at Classic 263, a radio based in Harare, Violet Makoto. Violet, what's up?
Hi, Joseph. Well, fortunately for me, it's still Violet Makoto. Hi, Wusi.
Hi, bye. How are you?
Not,
I'm fine.
nothing. Okay, okay. Should we say nothing changes for you, Violet?
Well, certain elements of life have remained constant for me, but
Mm,
definitely there's been an evolution in other aspects of my life. So it's all good.
mm. And also joining me is Zimpaper's radio production development and training manager, Leander Candiero, aka Mr. Lee, the captain, and also Lee K. Mr. Lee K, how you doing? Lee K, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, Joe. Hi, Wusti.
Hi.
Hi, Violet.
Hi,
Hi, Mr.
Leander.
Lee. How are you doing?
For me, my surname hasn't changed. I doubt it will change.
Okay, and I doubt it's going to change anytime soon, eh? It will remain Candiero forever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Mr. Lee is actually, I think, on his way home, and on his way to settle down and enjoy this conversation with us all. But feel free, Mr. Lee, on your way to come in as much as you can. I'll mute your mic so that we can stop having that interference with the cars on the road that we can hear. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Last but not least is the good guy. Yeah, a friend of mine who started out as can you believe it, a librarian, and now is a host at Classic 263. His name is Valentine Mabugo. I mean, Violet, you know him. Busu, you'd know him, and well, we all know him. Let me introduce to you Valentine Mabugo. Valentine, how you doing, my man?
I'm great, man. So much has changed as well for me. All right, now an executive producer, a trade unionist as well at ZBC. So much has evolved over time. But it's good to have you guys. Good to
Oh,
see the good old faces again. With Violet, we always see each other somehow and always interact. Thank you, guys.
okay, so what's happening is the ladies, as you can see from the stream there, the ladies really, really, totally did not want their faces to be shown. It's in the morning, they haven't done their makeup and stuff like that. So we understand. So you guys as well are free to switch off your videos and we can continue with just the audios. That's fine with all of us. All right, so guys, let's get this thing on the road. I really wanted to have you along on this podcast and have this conversation. It's more of a conversation than an interview. It's nothing like the formal setup. This is unradio like. But I love this format because you know what? It gives us that ability to do things that maybe we haven't been able to do in our spaces as radio broadcasters. The last radio station I was working at, probably it could have been, I'm not saying it was going to be, it could have been hard to have all of you and talk about all of these things, but it could have also been possible. I'm not too sure, but we get to do these things nowadays because with the medium such as podcasts and our own little streams and stuff like that, we can manipulate it and we can go as much as we can. But I just wanted us to have this conversation along the celebrations of World Radio Day. What have been some of your best experiences ever starting radio? I know when I started radio, I was doing radio programs rather than continuity. That means I had to sit in a studio, do a recording, and have it played on your shows, preferably maybe Busi's show or Violet's show. I don't know whose was it, but they will be played within a specific time slot, and then I graduated into that. But when it's been an ever evolving sort of experience for me. But let's start with Wusi. Alphabetically, I'll try, but let's start with Wusi. How has been your experience ever since you started radio, man? Just tell us a little bit of how you came into becoming a radio broadcaster.
I think mine was a very accidental entry, but looking back, I can say it was God divined because I came in at the time when I think Professor Jonathan Moyo was sort of like, some will say revamping, some will say was purging the media. and at the same time wanted new voices, and that is when I came in. And incidentally, I had studied voice production and media based work with the college that I'd attended, and I dropped out because of financial. The year 2000 was a bit tricky for Zimbabwe. That's when things were turning around. So with that little experience on stage, voice control, and my it was relatively good grades at high school, I was able to come in as a trainee. So that's how I started in radio. But it was very roller coaster because I was horrible. I was very horrible because I wasn't confident. I couldn't think on my feet. It's not something I trained for. Like guys who had gone to poly or had experience on Radio Zimbabwe and other stations at the time. So I learned on the job. I remember recording myself for the first few months, and I'd go home and listen, and I'd cringe at what I'd put the listeners through. But as time went on, I started to really find my voice, find myself. I started to find issues that really mattered to me that I wanted to share with the audience. And as time went on, I realized that indeed is something that I was really passionate about. And funny enough, before I even got into radio, I'd always say to myself, I would never want to be a journalist. I was very vocal about that. As I was thinking about a career I'd want to go into, I'd always say I'll never be a journalist. But look at me now. It's actually a passion that I'm even pushing beyond my time with the state broadcaster. That's all I can say for now, Joe.
He's gone to sleep.
I think we've lost him.
I think we've lost our host. We are on our own here.
Maybe we might as
okay,
well
okay.
host ourselves.
I'm back, guys. I'm back. Listen, something happened. I clicked a button and I'm outside the broadcast. Okay,
Fine.
technology. Busi, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, why is it that you didn't like to be a journalist?
It's not that I didn't like it. I thought I didn't have what it took to be one. For example, for starters, I don't know what it is that I have. I'm not or wasn't good at spelling at the time. And for
Okay.
me, that was something that I thought would be a deterrent, because to me, being a journalist involved writing and being very precise. And I didn't want to be in a profession where I'd have to be that perfect. And I thought that was the only hurdle. So I was very specific. But then I realized that, you know what, it wasn't even a hurdle that would hold me back as we move on, because journalism and media has just diversified into different aspects. And it wasn't just writing for newspapers that I could get into. I could do television and radio. And actually, because I was young then, of course, spelling wasn't something I'd perfected. And moving on, not that I'm now perfect at it, but at least we now have autocorrect and spell check.
Thank God for
Thanks to
autocorrect.
the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Violet, I want to move to you. I mean, you guys, Busi and Violet, were like the elders in
Really?
terms of, yeah.
No, don't go there.
You were the mature presenters when we came in. I came in as a rookie. I was trying to do these radio shows, radio programs and stuff like that. You guys had established radio shows on your own. I mean, you did 3 hours. Was it 4 hours back in the day? And I remember the very first conversation that led me to radio was with you, Violet. And we had attended some event somewhere, and I was still at an intern at the Chronicle newspaper back then in Bulawayo. And you said, try it out. You can go and see this guy. His name is Donald, blah, blah, blah. And then it led me to meeting Donald and eventually getting a slot on radio. How was your entry like as well on Radio, Violet?
Well, I'll be very frank and say I'm one of those people who had a smooth transition into employment life. Having already figured out myself from a very early age that I was born to communicate. My heart was set on it. It was journalism or nothing for me. And maybe my parents, okay, would hear this for the first time that I actually sabotaged myself going to the UZ because I wanted to go to poly. I
Mm,
actually lied
mm,
that I applied to the UZ when I didn't even, because I knew my heart set was going on on studying journalism, mass communications at Harare Poly. So I did my
wow.
2 years then, and we were quite fortunate back then that we would get placement for attachment in various media institutions. It was quite smooth for us. There were a few of us. So me and a few others, we were placed at ZBC, and it was then Radio One. I was placed in
Mm,
on Radio One, but while I was there, I had the fortunate incident of bumping into Tsitsi Mawarire, the late May so rest in peace, and I think we took a liking to each other, and she sort of adopted me. She put me under her wing, and she mentored me. And at the end of my attachment period, I had actually inherited some of the programs that she was doing for Radio One then. And I remember it was an environmental program that I then went on to do, and I actually excelled at it and got awards at it before I was even a full-fledged employee with the ZBC. So this is why I'm saying mine was quite smooth, but it's because I was lucky to get the mentorship of the people that I'd always looked up to, listening to radio, hearing them giving us nice content, entertainment, edutainment, and I grew up on that kind of information, and it sort of molded me to be the kind of presenter I was. So I think Busi highlighted how events went with the establishment of stations like SFM in Blawayo, which I then later on moved on to as a full-time ZBC employee. I had to move to Blawayo in Montrose. And this is, I think, where we all then got to meet each other and life moved on. But from the onset, I always knew that I was a communicator. And being a communicator, I was also a very private person. So I wanted a communication media that gave me the opportunity to talk to people, but at the same time, helped me to maintain the privacy of my life. You know, you go on radio, you can be whoever, you can talk whatever, and you then you can freely walk the streets. Nobody even knows you. That's what
yeah.
radio was to me then. So I enjoyed that I could interface with people via that good platform and still
Mm,
live my normal life out there. So for me, it was a win-win situation. But of course, now with the changes, the evolution, radio might not be as private as it used to be back then.
it's
Valentine can
not.
vouch for that. But that's it. We've been there through all the transitions, and for me, it really shaped my career path. You mentioned earlier, now I'm doing communications for a local parastatal. I can mention that is the Forestry Commission, but you would find that it has become easy for me because of the networks that I established while I was in radio. And it has also helped me to actually craft messaging for my current
Mm,
employment, to know
mm,
how to communicate to people and how to appeal to that target audience, is because I've been groomed as a communicator, and it has smoothened my development communication aspect of my work career. And I'm also
mm.
doing part-time with my parent. Well, SFM then changed to Classic 263 right now, and I'm back there again because it remains my first love, and we're still at it.
Yeah, yeah. From Busi, who bumped into it, oh, and we just lost him, and Violet, who chose from a tender age to become a radio journalist. I wanted to slot in now Valentine, who we all know started out on a slightly different, career path, and then uh, s- sort of like almost bumped into it again, or chose to to leave this one and get into radio broadcasting. But maybe we can always get back to him. Guys, thank you very much once again. Mr. Lee, I see he's not in. Valentine has just left. Maybe a couple of things that they have to do, but thanks for choosing to be here with us. Okay, here he's back. Valentine, I wanted to rope you in this conversation because we know, and I know, not that we know, I don't know about the other ladies, but I know you started out as a librarian at the very same radio station I got my very first gig on a radio station, and now you are a trade unionist, trade union. Is it a trade unionist? Something like that. I don't know the word.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then yeah, and you have your own show at Classic 263. How was you? How explain a little bit briefly your entry into mainstream media?
Like you have already alluded to, firstly, it was by accident. I'm one person who never thought I would be in formal employment in terms of being in a workspace where I'm guided by other people. I always thought I was going to be an athlete. So after all the frustrations, after my knee injury, I had to go to college. You know what they always say as kids when you're growing up, you need to go to school. Sport cannot never, be your life and so forth. Our old school parents will always say that to you. And I had to refocus. Then I had to go to Loyola Poly where I did library information science. So while I was on attachment, fortunately, because they were just I was just being pushed to do something that I didn't like. It wasn't I didn't even choose the course for myself. It was chosen for me because they couldn't allow me to sit at home through my frustrations. And I was supposed to go to college, and then that's the course that I was chosen. It was given to me by my cousin, who was a librarian at the Chronicle then, that is Fortune Bijo, and then his younger brother Alphonse was also a journalist then. So they said, okay, we'll find attachment for you, so you don't have to worry. So I had to go to the library. So while in the library, I met a man who I always give a greater credit to, that is Eric Colosa. So, in the library, compile the music, put the music together. And then also, it came a time when I used to also write scripts for some of these shows like Memory Lane, Double Bill, among others. And I would script some of the, so you show me all the old school music, all the nice music. You had this corner that you always had. You would always say, that kind of thing. And you will say, this music is special. This is how good this music is. And so it came a time when Donald Mkota came into the studio while I was writing, and he saw one of the scripts that I written for Eric. I was like, but you write good. What about, why don't you try your voice? And then, Violet, then I was learning also a few things from people that were around me then, and, getting the music from them. And, I remember doing my first show. It was on the 18th of September. In 2003, 2004, 2003. I can't remember, 2003 or 2004, around about there. Donald had to do the show with me from home after Fano Viriri decided not to come here. He wasn't committed and so forth. So I had to do his shift, and then everything is Easter. I remember Violet giving me his bag. We used to call his bag and CDs and everything. And going into the studio, that's the music I used to use. And she gave me the bin, her bin to use. That's the one. The rest is history. So the rest became history, and grew from one point to the other. Thereafter, moving from Bulawayo then to Harare, realizing every step, and I had to go through. Then I became known as the all-rounder. I could do sports, I could do current affairs in terms of politics, and I could do business. I did business shows as well, like tax talk, property talk, amongst others. Then I was doing like almost everything. I could do football commentary, which I'm doing nowadays as well. I could do cover other sports, do cricket and everything, and in between, because I've always been a sports person in my life. Then moved on to growing now from there now, in terms of the promotion started coming in and the recognition started coming in as well. Then right now I find myself as an executive producer for current affairs, though I would have preferred to have been given the sports one, because that's where my heart is. But nonetheless, they saw that strength in me, and because of the show, the breakfast show that I host, where it's more it is linked with more current affairs, where we look at the grill itself. We started off as what was it? I think back then we took when I started doing it with Anamiti. Then we moved on. It was morning talk. Then we changed the names over and over and over again. And then as we moved from SFM to Classic 263, and I remember launching the opening show for Classic 263 when the birth of it came, and it was quite an exciting time. And here we are now. This is where I am. I'm currently at work right now as a current affairs executive producer because there's the burial of a hero. So something has to be done at the end of the today. But that's the long and short of the journey that I've traveled so far as a journalist. I've managed to travel across Africa because of sport, doing comment and covering the Warriors and other projects that have come through with what broadcasting has provided me.
It's clear to see that amongst the four of us right here, Mr. Lee is not yet back in. Amongst the four of us right here, radio has done quite a lot for us from the early days. I mean, it's something that we should. I don't know what you guys believe in, but if you believe in God, it's something that you should thank Him, because not only did it, I think, did it leave you as a radio journalist or as a radio broadcaster. Violet, it made you into a communications person. We'll see it developed you into a development media practitioner. Valentine as an executive producer, and of course, the sky is the limit, or should I say, there's no limit to what you can become if you choose radio or broadcasting or the media within Zimbabwe. But there's been a lot of changes ever since we started. I remember when I started out, it wasn't as bad as it is now. I want to be honest, right? Let's call a spade a spade. It wasn't as bad as it is now. I remember I used to get uh, paid very well for the small little, or for the few programs that I used to do, and now if you equate that to what people are getting paid within the media industry, not that we're going to be talking numbers right here, but I know for a fact some of it is very, very bad, and it gets to an extent where you have people uh okay, that was my echo. So I wanted to come back and say these were the best experience. This is like the best experience, getting a chance to be on radio and getting a chance to be heard by a lot of people out there, the masses hearing you. Let's, exactly like we did in the first time, what have been the worst experiences? As I just say to you, my worst experience has been, now it seems more than ever that people that are working within radio earn very, very little compared to what they used to earn. I guess it's the economics of the day, the inflation, I don't know, but that's my worst experience. And I feel like when your talent, or when whatever it is that you love doing cannot sustain you, then you always will be finding another option in life. Busi, you've got your mic on. I'm sure you want to come in on this one.
I was getting ready for you to maybe say I should come in, but yes, I think for me the worst experiences weren't really related to money. At the time, I was very young. I think I didn't have a family, and so my
And very rich.
responsibilities were not as much. No, I wasn't rich, but I didn't have as many responsibilities as I had now. Of course, I'd been thrust into taking care of my immediate family because my dad had passed away, but the demands were not as much as they are now, and the economy to an extent wasn't as bad. But I think for me, the worst experiences were related to practicing the job, in the sense that I had this huge audience, this access to millions of Zimbabweans, but I had to self-censor. I couldn't express myself, and I couldn't be creative because that was a time when a lot of things were being shut down. You couldn't say this, you couldn't play this music, you couldn't do this, and then you had these jingles to play every 15 minutes or so. At the end of the day, coming to work became a routine that was just stressful and strenuous. Having the money become part of the equation, because eventually money did become a problem because the advertisers left, and the salaries started going down. At one point, I remember, because I wasn't full time, to start off with, I was on contract. I think for the first 2 years, we went for 6 months without being paid for our shifts. So you can imagine just waking up and doing the graveyard shift from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. and you're not being paid. It was just painful, because all you were going to do there was to just prop up whatever you had to just play the jingles, to interview people that were of a certain mindset. And for me, because as I stayed on, my eyes started to open to new possibilities, to new creative ideas, which the institution wouldn't allow you to bring in. It became more and more frustrating. And so I was pushed out of the job more by the environment. And I was starting to see other media houses that were cropping up, that were not necessarily linked to ZBC, but independent media houses that seemed to be doing well. They're flourishing, they had better equipment, they're playing nicer music. I'd listen to South African music, listen to South African radio, and I'd envy them. So when the opportunity came for me to join a private radio station, I took it up, because I felt like I needed to be free. Some aspect of me needed to be free or to learn new things. So that's how, for me, the change started. And from then on, it has been change after change after change, and I've loved it.
And change after change, and I agree with you on the issues to do with a stifling environment. Content creators or creative minds can never do well in an environment where they are told to do a certain thing. And when you talk about how your creativity was hindered because of the politics of the day, I think we've all gone through something like that in our relationship with radio. Violet, what do you think about,
Mhm.
what were your sort of worst moments within radio that you'd love to share?
Well, for me, that's a bit of a tricky question because I'm that kind of person who looks at things happening because they have to happen. That's basically my mantra in life. And having joined ZBC when I was what? I think I was 22, fresh from college. And just like Wusi, we didn't have that many responsibilities then. The sort of financial strains that come with the job, as we say, were not really that impacting on me because my responsibilities were still quite limited then. It was basically me and taking care of siblings here and there, not as much as they are now. But for me, it was part of the career growth, and I took it all in my stride. I think I've been interviewed before about my life in radio, and I always want to quote this labor of love. What kept me going was the passion I had for radio, the passion I had to communicate, and I was always getting good feedback from the people who were listening to our shows, and for me that was reward enough. Fine, as life went on, you would see then that life is changing, it's taking you in different directions. But for me, everything happened because it had to happen, and it's contributed to my career growth. I left radio not because I was frustrated by anything, because I did all that I could do within the time that I was with radio. And I had to jump on to the next stage of my life, but not because there was any frustration that I faced during my radio time. And you did talk of the issues of creativity. Possibly it's because of the area that I chose to immerse myself in. I remember with Busi, we used to do gender. We were responsible for the gender desk where we had programs like Women's Hour. Remember that, Busi? We had women.
Yes,
It was
yes.
fun. It was
Wonderful.
fun
It was a
doing it.
wonderful
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, so we had gender, we had the gender desk. I also had the health desk. I had the environment desk. So you'll see that in my area, the area that I was taking care of it, there wasn't that much stifling of creativity. We could go to town about issues to discuss as long as they were linked to the area that we were responsible for. I'm sure maybe when we talk of the creativity being stifled, we are now referring to the political desks and all that, which is possibly where people find challenges when they are working, especially for the state broadcaster. But for me, for lack of a better word, my radio ride was smooth. This is why even now I found my way back to my first love.
Mm,
I
mm.
still have those great memories and I still feel that I've got more to give to radio.
Yeah,
I
can
feel
I come in there, Joe?
uh, yes, yes, you can.
Yes, I want to agree with Violet on on the aspect of the path or the theme that you'll be working on. I think with me, with time now, I've tended to be more an advocate and commentator on issues and often asking questions, especially of the powers that be. So I've moved into an area of calling for accountability and transparency. And that's almost impossible when you're working for a state-run institution because you're basically asking the government and the powers that be, where has the money gone? Why are you not
Mm,
Mhm.
doing ABCD? And I couldn't ask those questions while working for ZBC. So yes, Violet is correct in that in her field that she was passionate about, she was able to go in full throttle. But with some of us, for example, you couldn't go to Makandeni when there's a demonstration or there are water cuts or power cuts and start asking where has the money gone or what is happening here, they would just say you're a rebel.
Mhm.
mm. I agree with you. There's always that unending situation between, or the relationship between our salaries, our advertisers, and when I say salaries, that is the person who pays our salaries, the advertisers, and what it is that you want to do personally as a person, because you can never separate the radio and the person and the individual. I'll give you
Yeah,
an example. The music that Boosie and Violet and Valentine and Joe play on whatever radio show is so different because we choose it, or we decide, okay, I'm going to play Lady Smith Blake Mambazo, I'm going to play Louis Mhlanga, or I'm going to play Michael Jackson or something like that. It's personal. And when you say, Busi, you had this thing, you wanted to speak out. Was it because of the place at which you, or not the place, but the history of your life, or should I say your life, and the things that you saw around you that made you feel like I really want to speak out, but maybe the
it,
platform at
yeah.
ZBC was not the right one?
It was the things that I would experience every day. So, like I said, remember that was around 2000, moving on to 2005. And there was just this political shift. The opposition was strong. ZANU-PF was also very strong in trying to defend its territory. So coming home and going to work, writing the mchovas, hearing people's conversations, experiencing the hike in prices, experiencing the shortages of goods and stuff like that. Seeing my mother, who was a new widow at the time, my father had just died a few years back, and seeing the shift in our life from when my father was alive and at that time now when I was supposed to be supporting my mother, the differences were stark. And there were things that I felt needed to be said, needed to be shared online.
Mm,
For example, Violet then was coming from Harare and Bulawayo was new for her. I would understand, for example, if she might not have understood what life had been before that, before she moved to Bulawayo. But
mm,
I had been born and bred in Bulawayo. And even worse for me, I had family that had worked at the national broadcaster, and I had a brief or experience of what it had been like at the ZBC in terms of freedom of communication. So I could tell the differences, and that fire in me just wanted to say something on behalf of the people, the community that I was living with. And as time was driving me on to where I am now, I realized that I need to speak out more even for the women because I
Mm,
realized that they were even more struggling more, and their voices were being stifled worse than everyone else. And
mm,
like Violet
mm.
maybe says, it all was a build up. All of it was leading me to where I am now. It was all a
Mm.
lesson, and it was all shaping me to where we are now.
I was totally having a blast in Bulawayo. I didn't know the politics of the land. I didn't know what was happening. All I wanted was I was fresh out of college. I wanted to, to start my media job. I wanted to do something really crazy with it. I wanted to break records and etc. etc. I remember we were the first two guys, me and a colleague of mine, Brian Chitemba, who were the very first to get our attachments. And we were doing so well with page one stories on newspapers. And now we're doing a radio show. That's all I was really, really interested in doing. But like you said, when you are not from within a specific area, you might find it hard to understand exactly what the people are going through. That said,
Yeah.
I wanna rope in the good guy Valentine on this one, and also just ask him before we continue on your worst experiences as a radio broadcaster, Valentine. Okay, seems like he's not there. But I wanted to say, Busi, on that note where you really wanted to speak out, but you are on a state broadcaster, and it was broadcasting not only Bulawayo, but it was also broadcasting for the rest of the country. What's your view right now in terms of state broadcasters versus community radio broadcasters? Which one do you favor the most?
To be honest, there's not much I can say of community broadcasters. Or you mean the commercial, the regional commercial radios?
Regional, it could be a local podcast, a local broadcaster, or as
All right.
opposed to a state broadcast where you're even broadcasting from Bulawayo to a person who is in Mutare. You understand?
Right. I think for me, the creativity really with the national broadcaster hasn't changed much in terms of content. People are not, I don't know, maybe Valentine will be able to share more light on that. But from just listening, I feel like there's still a bit of reservations from the presenters to open up or even allow people to come in and give feedback, because the medium has now evolved from being a top down approach. You can now have audiences coming in and giving you feedback. Of course, we used to have that a lot through phone ins, but now that there's WhatsApp, there's Facebook, people can also contribute to the program as you present, even without them having to call in. But you find that it's not as easy to do that with national broadcasters, but because of the advent of the internet. So, for example, you can't really censor every comment, and people can actually record a snippet of what you've said on radio and place it online for debate. That is what has changed. So, what has changed has been the audience's access to the medium and their ability to critique what has been discussed on the medium. But as for the media, the national broadcaster and its subsidiaries themselves, they haven't changed much in the methods that they are employing, because there is still that limitation to the extent to which they can criticize government. But as for the regional ones, I think they have a bit of leeway, though there is still a level of being censored, but it's not so bad. But what I like about the regional is that you at least get to hear the most local productions in terms of music and other types of content, like you're saying, the podcasts and stuff.
Mm,
So for me, I would go more regional than national, because the national will not always address what is particularly affecting you at a personal level. So you'll find
mm,
that for me, stations like Kulumani FM, Sky's Metro FM, those now are gaining traction. I noticed in one survey that Kulumani FM was actually a second lead after Radio Zimbabwe in terms of
mm,
listenership. And that's a regional station, which shows you what people want to hear. People want to hear their language. They want to hear about things that affect them, which is why Radio Zimbabwe has always led. And so for us, the national radio stations really need to look at what content are they giving the people? Is it relevant to their day-to-day lives?
Mm. I agree with that. I agree with you. Before I let Violet come in as well, I agree with you totally and 100%. Listen, when I started out, I was so excited in having my voice heard in Mutare, as I said, or in Nyanga, or Bulawayo, or Harare, and stuff like that. But then I started to realize that there is just much more than just broadcasting because you need relevance. You need to be addressing the issue at hand for the person who's listening to you. There's just much more than just playing music. It has to suit a particular area, geography, or a certain kind of mood or whatever that is
Yeah,
being found in
yeah.
that particular area. So if I would go on air and I play whatever it is that I want to play, which I think is great because I've chosen it. By the way, in Zimbabwe, to all those that will listen to this podcast, we've never really had a programs manager or a music manager. It's always been play your own music and stuff like that, and maybe
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
so the mood that I have, who never or is was I would never tell my mood, or you'd never tell my mood or the mood of the area by the specific music that we're listening to, and that was always the hard thing for me. I've
I've lost you, Joe.
Can anybody hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Busi, Violet, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Now I can hear
Hello,
you, Joe.
I
Yeah.
can hear you now.
hello, 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 hello,
It seems like your mic has a problem. I can hear
hello,
you.
We can hear you now,
hello.
Joe.
Okay, so yeah, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. That's the good thing about this whole thing. We are not live anywhere, so we can try and just connect and then I'll clip the audios together from where we start. So if you can hear me, just try and fidget with one or two things. I'm just going to most probably exit. Violet, you can hear me. Can you say something so that I hear you?
I can hear you perfectly. I can hear you.
Nope, I can't hear you.
You can't. I can hear you.
Lucy, you're back. Can you hear me?
Hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Busi? Okay. Something is totally, totally wrong. Hello.
Hello. Hello. Technology akukhanya mfana.
Hello. Oh, Violet, you're back. Wusi, are you there?
I've been
Hi.
here. Back from
Yeah.
back from where?
Can
Sorry,
you hear us
guys.
now?
I can hear you. I don't know what happened. Okay, so I think I lost my connection with my mic, and then when I was trying to redo it again, it needed me to just refresh, go outside the broadcast, and come back again. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay.
So the good thing about it is not we are not live anyway. I'll just edit all of this nonsense that we're talking about right now, and then start from where we just left off.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay. Valentine, thank you for coming back. If you can hear me, can you hear me? Valentine is typing something. Okay. Oh, it's okay. You can't hear me. But guys, listen, we ended off on the part where I was actually literally just saying I haven't really been able to be to to get to a stage where the impact to a single radio broadcast that I am doing is is super, or is one of those big ones, because I've always felt like the message gets diluted when I am talking about something uh, that happened in Harare and someone is in Norton or in Gweru or in Bulawayo. So I wanted to agree with Busi on the regionals or the community radio stations or podcasts that cater for a specific people in a specific area, because that for me is a powerful tool more than this, the national broadcasters that we started off on. I love the more intimate community based radio stations because you get to see the change, the impact, or even the message reaching to the next person. Valentine, we wanted to rope you in on this conversation on your worst experience on radio. If you can hear us, please go ahead. Okay, he's not there. Right. Um, we started off. We started off on a very. Okay, you can't hear us. We started off on a very bad, not very bad, but we started off very, very early in our careers with a lot of things that are not being used right now within the media space. I remember we used to use CDs, tapes,
Mhm.
records. What did we call
Reels.
the reels? The reels. Oh my God, those things were terrible.
Do
And
you
Alan,
do
You,
you re-
Alan was the expert.
do you
yeah,
remember
exactly,
do you remember splicing?
Yes.
Splice
Oh my
exactly.
God.
splice editing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We come from far.
We are like vintage Radioheads, right? Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
when I look at where we started and how you used to just cue those things back, I'm amazed at
Yeah.
how we have just managed to survive. So this whole media has changed so much in terms of the skills you need today are not the skills you needed back then, and the technology etc. What are some of those things that have really changed for you for the better, and maybe we can look at for the worst as well through this conversation? Let me at this moment, let's start with Violet.
Hey, Joe, you've just actually triggered a recent memory. I told you earlier that I recently found my way back to radio. It hasn't been that long, but I felt that there was still a lot more radio in me. And we think for a minute there that our voice is enough, our words are enough to talk to people. But then you go into this studio. We remember I left radio about 10 years back, and
Mm,
that's when we were still doing this reel to reel splice editing. And then over the 10 years, there's been an evolution in the technology, so to speak, for radio. More or less digital now, though not maybe to other international standards, but there has been an evolution towards digitalization. So you can imagine poor Violet.
I can imagine that.
Ancient,
you,
ancient Violet.
you can imagine ancient Violet going back into the studio and expecting to carry that bin. You referred to that bin earlier, a bin
Yeah, yeah.
of CDs, and you're told, no, no, we don't do that anymore.
We don't do that.
We don't do that anymore. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock, but it's something that one can easily settle into, because at the end of the day, the console desk is still the same, the faders are still the same, and as long as you have the mind to communicate, you have the passion to communicate things, it sort of relives in you, and you then carry it forward. So I do feel sorry for those people who have been at it throughout that. At least for me, I can have an excuse that I did take a sabbatical, and obviously coming back I needed to be reintroduced, reinitiated into radio. But then for some people, the changes came while they were on the job, so it really was an up down kind of work experience for them. But I think it's all good, it's all for improvement, it's all for enhancement of radio as a product. So the technology, the improvements of it thereof is something quite welcome. And also this thing of the interactiveness of radio now, like Wusi was talking there, Kuti, while you're on radio, somebody sending you a WhatsApp message, giving you that direct comment with maybe, so what this is nonsense. That's the kind of feedback you can get while you're on radio. And you can imagine what that does to you while you're on air. So you really need
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
in the mind of it, that whatever people say, it doesn't
Mm,
shake you. You need to recover from it and end your shifts. And also this thing that people expect you to respond to them because they are there, or they can see you online via your WhatsApp platform. Even if they request a song for you to play, they expect you to give it to you, to give it to them there and then. Unlike in the olden days when you can promise them, I can give it to you in my next shift, because they would have done the request over the phone anyway, and you have a bin of CDs, and you can just tell them, no, I didn't bring that one today. So you can wait until my next shift, my next compilation. Now they expect you that you have a whole YouTube channel to check to check for music and play it for them there and then. So that urgency that has been brought about by technology right now, it is making radio more interesting. And but the only challenge is the radio producer, the presenter, has to be in the frame of mind to deal with that urgency as well.
mm. I hear you. We'll say, how was your transition? I mean, from real tape CDs, records, vinyls, and some. We used to have those small little, bigger than cassettes, but they were, what do you call it? The ones that we play the jingles on. What were
Oh, I've forgotten the
the
name of those ones, the
the,
tiny
the
ones.
exactly the midi? Was it the MIDI tapes, something like that, that you'd slot in and punch and stuff like that?
Yeah.
How was your transition? How's been your
Oh, well, for
your
me, I think for me it has been a bit different because I haven't really gotten back to radio to a point of the console desk where I'm pushing faders and playing music. I've mostly been into talk radio since I left, so I don't necessarily need to play much music. So a lot of the work that I've been doing has been about commentary, dialogue, discussions, panel discussions, and a lot of these I can do online. I can record like you are doing now offline via my phone or my laptop, and I can edit. The difference now is that I don't need to bring people into the studio, and COVID has made it even worse because you cannot meet people face to face. But thank God, technology has now allowed us to meet
Mm.
in our remote spaces. Like right now, I'm in my bedroom, I'm probably in my pajamas. I will not confirm it, but you are recording me, and this is something that wasn't possible in the past. I remember we had to have a driver go and pick up guests, or the guests would need to come into the studio. We'd need Alan to be on the other side of the booth. If there's a mistake, he would stop us and we'd record again. But right now, we had, the problem with the network, and you just said continue. I'll edit it out later, and you're doing it yourself. In the past, you had two, three people involved in just one production. But now I can just do it myself, record, edit, and post online. The costs have been cut. The number of people involved has been cut. The quality, I think, has improved a bit, except for that, of course, in Zimbabwe, with data and network issues, those come into play. But I think for me, the biggest changes with the technology have been very positive because they've allowed people that cannot necessarily work for ZBC or any other funded media to do their own thing. Like myself, I've tried to go on to branch off independently, and I'm working with a team of freelance reporters. And they are still doing the work that ZBC reporters are doing. Maybe the difference being we don't have as much a big audience and as much funding. But the work we're doing, I think, is still as impactful and has its own audience as well, which is positive.
I remember after leaving Power FM in Gweru, I think it was 2007 to 2008 thereabouts. I then got a chance to come back on a radio station, and that was in South Africa. But that was I think 2018, the very first time I came back after that sort of like 11 years of not doing radio. I was presented with a small little mixer. This is stuff that I had known. Like, I mean, this is audio, this is radio. So I knew about the mixer and stuff like that. So it was very, very easy. But then fast forward to when I then got the radio gig at Capital FM in Harare. The desk is digital. You've got cameras looking at you every time. Meaning you can go on your Facebook, on your Twitter, on your Instagram anytime. You've got three sets of computers, one playing music, the other is playing news, the other is for you to Google and stuff like that. You have the other one has got WhatsApp and all of these social media platforms. It was just too much to consume in one day.
Complicated for
It was
you.
too complicated, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I said to myself,
Yeah.
I think this is the future of radio. I fell
This
in
is the
love with it.
ultimate.
Exactly. I fell in love with it, but it was challenging the first day or two. But I would definitely see the set of skills that we need right now are so different than what we need. There's just so much more. When you mentioned,
But guys, don't you think?
okay,
Sorry,
go
Joe.
ahead,
Sorry to cut you. I
go
need to
ahead.
say, don't you think it's always been that complicated for us? Because I remember you needed to cue a song, maybe on the turntable, cue a cassette, cue a CD, and be ready to play a jingle at a certain time. And you're following a schedule because you had to play the adverts at a specific time. And then there was a
Mm-hmm.
program you had to reel in. And all these things were happening at the same time, and maybe at a live show. uh I mean, the engagement is still the same. The difference is that it's now on a computer. Actually, I think it's easier because all you're doing is clicking a button.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
You have a point there. It was
I
more
would
hectic back
I
then.
would I would argue and say it was more physical.
It was
It
like you've
was.
run a marathon. After 4 hours, you feel like you've run a marathon.
I mean, you guys
Yes.
can attest to that. I mean, you didn't you would lose a couple of pounds just in a 4-hour radio show. You know
Yeah, if Diana hasn't brought the program, you start sweating. How am I going to fill in this time? This the next 30 minutes because you hadn't planned
exactly,
what to play.
exactly. Imagine going back and forth to your bin to select a couple of CDs that you want to fill time with. So you need 3 or 4 songs. So you've got CDs, you've got albums. So you can't play the whole album. You have to play one song after each and every album. So if you're playing 5 songs, you need 5 CDs, unless it was a
Yeah.
compilation.
Or
So
if
that
the
was
turntable skips suddenly and
exactly,
you're relaxing or had gone to the toilet, then you hear it over the speakers that the song has skipped. You have to rush back. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's traumatizing.
Oh, yeah.
but you didn't have your social media feeds. You didn't have
Yeah.
live interaction. We had phone calls. You'd see them flashing, but it's not every time that you'd pick up a call and find
Yeah,
out.
you could
You know,
ignore them,
you
eh?
could ignore them. You know, and then there is that huge competition of actually making a radio show that is r- actually interesting. You want your social media buzzing so that you can
Yeah.
almost feel like you're doing something. Back
Yeah.
then it was like, okay,
Gratification.
exactly. If my phone is not ringing, then it's okay. I'm still doing my job at the end of the day. I don't know what's happening out there. Maybe they hear me, maybe they don't. Maybe there's a booster that's down. It's a little bit different. But I agree. In some way, it's the same thing, and it was just the time or the moment that we were in. So yeah. Mm.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
true.
Guys, I want to move you into, this part of the conversation in which the power of broadcasting has been taken away from the huge big media platforms into the person who really needs to have his word go out there. Like, for example, Wusu, you said, I have a team. I do things. I want to be independent, right? I have this
Mhm.
podcast, and Violet, you have issues or subject matters that you want to talk about. You're still in there within, a big corporation, slightly different than than the rest, but it's okay. Um, what do you think about this whole thing? Because now we have not only radio broadcasters. Like back in the day, you'd know there's Busi, there's Violet, there's Jethro, there's Donald, there's what. But now you have people on Facebook. Someone can survive on Facebook the whole day listening to, I don't know, whoever is broadcasting there, and it will still be a broadcast. What do you think about this huge change in which corporates and big platforms are actually struggling to keep up with the other platforms that are growing so fast?
Okay, I'll jump in there. I think it's both good and bad. Good in the sense that in a country like ours, where information is still difficult to reach out to for the ordinary person, not everyone has access to television and radio. Not everyone can access the newspaper or the internet, but a majority of Zimbabweans now have access to a mobile phone, which we hope eventually. My last statistical read was like 4 million people have access to the internet, which is still a very small fraction compared to the population of the country. And yet we have about 90% of the population, I think, who have access to mobile phones, which means a huge percentage doesn't have smartphones or cannot afford the internet. So it's a good thing in the sense that because other people are getting into information processing, where they are sharing information, they are recording stuff and putting on WhatsApp, putting on the internet, it means that it doesn't burden the bigger organizations in the news coverage. They get to have other people help them in sharing the news. Actually, I've seen media organizations tapping into what has been shared by the citizen journalist or the ordinary person to cover the news. So, for example, they'll say, according to a video posted by a witness, this is what happened. But the problem maybe is in the quality of the news and the misinformation aspect, where you have people sending stuff that is old, stuff that has been photoshopped, stuff that is miscommunicated, people that are not trained in information processing and publishing, sharing that information without concern for the impact it will have on the broader public. Because once it's out there, it's difficult to take it back. It's difficult to correct it, because even if you are to send a correction, not everyone who received the first message will get that correction. So media
Mm.
houses now have the burden of fact checking. But the problem that I find with a lot of these media houses is that they're falling into the trap of also trying to break the news without first fact checking, without
Mhm.
getting the right of reply, getting people to verify information. So if someone has been accused of something, for example, a big media house will just publish that without asking, is this true? Did you really do this? Or, because they also want to be in that frame of saying, we were the first to report this and get the clicks and get the likes and the comments on Facebook. So that is where the problem is that I see for now.
Everybody is trying to be the first in today's media. You get into any media, house, they'll tell you we need to be trending, we need to be the first, and sometimes it
Exactly,
has
the trending.
it
Yeah.
has repercussions. It has repercussions. But Violet, you're still in a you've come back into a big parastatal. Has anything sort of changed? In regards to what Wusi was alluding to.
Yes, definitely. Social media has become a big part of radio broadcasting, such that you'd find that even the big radio stations also have some social media handles, Twitter,
Mm.
Facebook, and stuff, so that they quickly as well feed from what's happening out there, and they can quickly communicate about it on radio. One thing that we can never take away from terrestrial radio right now, which I think we all need to appreciate and just build on to enhance radio more, is that it has presence, it has reach. You go to the worst area, the marginalized areas, you would still find somebody with a small Kambudzi phone that can access local radio stations,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which means that for us, I will refer to my current full-time employment right now. I'm a communicator on behalf of a big parastatal. I always go back to radio. I would always go back to Radio Zimbabwe because I know I will reach my targets. I need to talk to farmers out there in Mzarabani. Radio Zimbabwe will go there. I need to talk to farmers out there in Binga. I know National FM will give me that reach. So terrestrial radio shouldn't really panic about what's happening, but instead use the competitive edge they already have, enhance their product more. They can still maintain
Mm,
that competitive edge.
mm,
I agree with you largely on the fact that if we mention Zimbabwe in this conversation, it makes sense on everything that you're talking about. We mentioned the issue of the 4 million people having cell phones, maybe not, Android phones, or what should I say, digital phones, maybe having the dumb phones in which Violet uses quite nicely with the communication processes because everyone can get
mm,
this information that you want. But it sort of starts to change when you just cross the border a little bit. But right now, we're not talking about that. But I wanted to ask you, do you think radio is still as effective? I ask this sort of like a rhetorical question because you've already answered that, Violet, and you say it's effective to the people that I want to locate, the people that are in the marginalized areas. But there is the issue of fake news all around us. Back then we used to carry the weight of if something has to be authenticated, it's on radio or it's on a
Mhm.
local TV station. But now it almost feels like that is the opposite. We the big radio stations or the big television stations or studios do not have the responsive their responsiveness to issues is very slow, and sometimes they sift it out, as in the case with Zimbabwe. uh, Big radio stations and production studios such as ZBC will sift out stuff that they don't want to report and leave it because it goes against their grain or it goes against whatever it is that they stand for. So are we still as effective, bearing in mind all of these things that are happening around us?
Maybe I can go first on that.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
think this whole issue now just centers on the issue of ethics. Uh, we don't. I think there are certain institutions that we would not expect to want to push volumes over quality of information that they are given. In as much as social media is giving conventional, I don't know, Wosi will kill me for using that word, or maybe our terrestrial radio station. But in as much as we want to push volumes against and also trend, just like social media, at the end of the day, we just need to calm down and remember what radio is all about. Go back to our ethics as communicators, as journalists. And what this that then does is it will bring back It will bring back your audiences. It will bring back your listeners because they know that what you dish out to them at the end of the day is the truth. They might go for 9 hours feeding off social media, feeding off the fake news being on social media. But at the end of the day, they'll switch on to the radio stations and listen to the news bulletin because they expect that they will get the correct story if you maintain your ethics as an institution. I don't think I keep coming back to this issue that we need to calm down and maintain our standards and maintain our ethics. People will always, I'll refer to something that happened not so long ago where people would be getting fake news throughout the day. At the end of the day, they were tuning into the 8 o'clock news on ZTV because they expected that they would get facts from that. So that's kind of the same pattern that I'm trying to create here. That at the end of the day, institutions need to just go back to their ethical standards and get facts check, get correct information before they feed it to their audiences. If you keep on producing fake news or trying to compete with social media on who delivers first without verifying information, your listeners will run away from you at the end of the day.
Mm.
So it's better to take
Yeah.
it slowly and maintain your listenership. You'll survive the wave.
The onslaught. Violet, I'm picking a huge trend within your life. You have been the calmest, or should I say, don't panic kind of radio broadcaster or media person amongst the three of us. I mean, not,
Yes, don't
uh,
panic.
don't panic. Keep it cool. Everything is going to be all right. Busi, you had an input on this one?
Yes, I just want to agree with Violet and maybe add on to say I think the old radio terrestrial still holds sway and will continue to do so as long as I said, fewer Zimbabweans have access to the internet and to mobile devices that can allow them to go beyond terrestrial radio. So many people still rely on the traditional radio to get their information. And as she articulated, a number of us will get a lot of rumors, but we still wait for the hourly news to confirm the rumors that we've heard. How many times did we hear that the late President Mugabe died? But
Before
always
he
we'd say, as
actually
long as
died.
yes, I think I remember every time I heard the news or got a WhatsApp message, I'd say, as long as the BBC hasn't reported it, I know for a fact he hasn't died
It's a
because
lie.
he is so popular. Yes, he is so popular that the international news would report it first. Even if he's sick, they will report that he has been flown somewhere. And before I see it there, I will not believe it. So, radio for Zimbabwe still has that. And the traditional media still has the production line that fact checks, or at least we believe so. We still have editors, we still have fact checkers, still have researchers. So you hope that the news that they are giving you has been verified, is true. Of course, with a pinch of salt here and there. But that is what they should be riding on. That is what they should be riding on. And the resources that they have as well, because most of these formal media, they are believed and trusted by the officials. They are the ones who get to say, okay, I'll comment if it's you, I'll talk to you, you know. Unlike with these startups that we are running, I can't just call up the Minister of Health, I can't just call up the Minister of Finance and say, I would like to interview or verify something. They'll always ask, who are you and where are you from? But with Violet, if she says, I'm with SFM or I'm with ZBC, or whoever, they always have that credibility, that word behind them, or the fact that
Mm,
they belong to the same family. And
mm,
finally, you have these new online media like the ZTN. Those ones, they are also verifiable. They have journalists that have been trained, and the quality is always good. But the fact that they are online, it means they have a lesser reach. So, in as
mm,
much as they are giving you the news that maybe your ZTV news will not give you, they are far from the reach of the majority of the audience. They will not reach my grandmother in Kai, you know, they will not
Mm.
reach someone in Binga or in Berengwa. So, this is what the big media houses should ride on. The fact that they have the track record and people
Mm.
already have more access to them than the others.
I think we all agree on that one. These big media houses, these radio stations, they need to tap into other platforms to augment other than to compete. They must stay true to who they've always been, like Violet said, and Busi as well. But augment that with SMSs, with WhatsApp platforms, with Instagram, Twitter, and stuff like that, and then they increase their reach, but also stay true to what they've been doing for the longest. Maybe the issue here, and there's nobody to answer, has always been the issue of. That's why I wanted Mr. Lee to be, a part of this conversation. Maybe the issue could be, the budget seems to be growing bigger and bigger for these big organizations. They need now a social media manager. They need now an editor for that website. They need now somebody to take care of what platform, this platform and the other. They need an executive producer. They need the reporter himself. They need equipment. They need technical. So all of these things, they keep piling, and they cannot see, or they cannot sort of have an understanding of how to deal with these costs. But the general perception that I've got from this conversation with all of you as my radio friends is that as an individual grows, so does the way in which they create. We started off with Wusi. You were trying to do something while you were still at ZBC. You couldn't do it, but then you realized, listen, I don't think I'll ever get this freedom to do it anywhere else. Let me do it on my own. And then we had Violet, who with all the things that you were creating, environment, health, you name it, back then at SFM, you moved on to work as a communications for an environment parastatal. And now even when you present, I'm sure you present with a lot of wisdom, other than the last or the good old days when you were still single. Or you okay, all right, when you were still
Okay, as happened.
the young. The same goes for me as well. While growing up,
Okay.
the same goes for me as well. While growing up, you start sieving and you sift some of the things that you want and you don't want, and you think, oh, this is cool and this is not, or this is a waste of time, etc., etc. If you were to be given an opportunity, Musi, to run uh, SFM right now, not that it's not being run nicely, what are some of those things that you would take in and some of the things that you would remove? I don't know how much of SFM do you consume right now, or Classic 263 do you consume?
Okay, because I don't like literally have a radio in my house. Can you believe that? I do not have a gadget that is radio. So if I ever want to tune into radio, I have to use my phone or be in my car. And
Mm.
that hasn't happened in a long time because of the lockdown. So I haven't been listening much to, but I always made a point when I was going to work to listen to classic the morning, what was it? The morning, that talk program
Morning
with
grill.
Vanessa. The morning grill, yes. I used to love that one. So for me, I would keep things like that. I'm a talk radio person. I like talk shows. I like to hear, what people are doing, what they are saying, what's happening around them. So I would have more of that, of which that's what SFM was, and maybe that's what shaped me. I would want to hear less of the officials and more of the people. What are they thinking? What is happening in their lives? How is COVID affecting them? I would have more of those shows. I'd have more a target on women. What are women going through? For example, with this COVID issue, a lot of women that are expecting or having children, the trauma you'd have going into hospital and knowing that COVID is there, but you have no choice but to go and give birth at a hospital. What are the experiences of women? What are the experiences of young people? The mental health issues, of which I think SFM was already doing that, but maybe from a bottom up approach, where we are not just wanting to talk to ministers and health practitioners, but from an experiential point of view. What are people going through, and going to those health centers and reflecting to the audiences, making them see what is happening? Because when the people see, when the policymakers see, they act. For me, it's about transparency and accountability. That's it. That is what I'd like to see more of. And maybe um, a few more entertainment programs like dramatic productions. Yeah, more or less, I
Mm.
think.
Violet, I had muted you there. I think someone is playing music at the background. I don't know, but I don't know if you can comment on this one since you're still working at SNBC at Sport FM. But if you were given a chance to run it, what are some of those things that you think you could, or you would love to see happening at your station right now?
Earlier that I had left radio some 10 years back, I think. But
Mm.
and since then and now, when I'm back at radio, having seen what I've seen and having done what I've done in my other areas of life, I would push for more development communication on not just this radio station, our former radio station, which is Classic 263, but on radio in general. Because what is restrictive right now in terms of communication for development is that most of these radio institutions, they look at it as marketing material when we are actually doing community service. Most of these institutions, when I'm talking of development communication, I'm talking about things that matter in the communities, things that impact on at the grassroots level. But if I need to discuss that on any of the radio channels that are there, marketing jumps in. Is an opportunity for them to make money. Yes, we cannot take away the business side of things, but there is serious need to have that portion of radio, that quarter of radio that is committed to development communication. And for me, that would be something I would go in strongly with. And this applies to all radio stations.
Mm. Wow. So you see, I think we've got the brains to run a radio station. I mean, I think maybe the three of us should
Maybe just come up with our own station.
endorse. I totally
I endorse that.
She endorses it. See, Pussy is with me here. Pussy is with me. Violet, don't check it out now. Okay, so Mr. Lee has decided to join us eventually, and he is the Zimbabwe's radio production development and training manager. He has done a lot of work within radio, and he has trained people, including myself. I don't know how good of trainee I was. He will be the judge of that. But we've been having a long conversation, Mr. Lee. But I think you catch us at a time where I think your input is actually required, and we are talking about you know the effectiveness of radio with all the fake news around us. Do you think we still carry the same weight as we did back then? How does radio need to adapt to make sure that they can survive against fake news, against platforms that have been created online? You name it, the bus stop TVs, you name it, everybody can be a broadcaster right now. YouTube, anyone can broadcast on their own. What are some of those things that what do you think radio stations or big corporates need to do? Can you hear me, Mr. Lee?
Just testing. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, so was that question directed to me?
Yes, it was directed to you, but maybe before we start, you know, hitting you up with so many questions, let's just rewind a little bit. Rewind a little bit
Yeah.
onto your, the very first time you went on radio. How was that for you? Before I give you and keep you updated on what we've been talking about right now, what was
Okay.
your radio experience like?
Okay. So my first time on radio ever was, so I've got two first times. One was
You can't have
pre-recorded.
two first times. Oh, okay.
I have two first times. So so the first one was pre-recorded, which is what got me onto radio. It was a radio show hosted by DJ Munya and Sophie Chamboko. It was called Fulfill Your Fantasy. It was on Radio 3. And so we pre-recorded at Shed Studios. and it was my 15 minutes of fame on their 30-minute radio show. So the first time I heard myself on radio, I was listening to a pre-recording, and it was a competition. The long and short of it, I came out tops in that competition, which is what landed me on radio. The first time I was live on radio was with Davis Mugadza on a Saturday afternoon, just after Joe Hussein's show. So this is why I'm saying I have two first times, and of course they were all fantastic.
Okay, two first times. That's the first time I'm hearing that a person who has two first times. But Boosie, you have to leave. Boosie has to leave, Mr. Lee. I just wanted to give her this opportunity to say goodbye before she steps out of this broadcast, and then we can continue the conversation. Sadly, you caught us at almost the at the end of this. Boosie, thank you very much for being a sport, and continue to work within media development and women. I see you talking a lot about women development, and that is, I think, your calling in radio. Continue to do well, and we'll always be in touch whenever we need to do something like this as well. Happy World Radio Day to you.
Thank you, guys. I feel so bad that I'm now leaving because it feels like a small reunion for everyone. I hope we can do this again and in person. I've never thought about it, but I think it's very important because it's networks like this that you never really lose out of in life. And I hope that one day we'll get the opportunity post-COVID to meet up in person and say, hey, how has life been? What are you doing? How can I chip in? And things like that. Thank you so much, Joe, for making this happen. Violet, my sister, I remember. Thank you. I learned a lot from you. I know you might not know, but yeah, you're one of those
Oh,
inspirations. And
now you.
Lee, well, you and me we have a long history.
And I feel like you're running away from me, but anyway.
Yes, I'm running away from you. Otherwise, I'll cry. I'll start thinking of those years. Otherwise, thank you so much, guys.
All
Bye,
right.
Busi.
Thanks, Lucy.
Bye.
Okay, so off to the guy who's got his two first times on radio,
Mhm.
um, Mr. Lee, and we were talking about the effectiveness of radio.
Yeah.
With fake news all around us, do we still carry the same weight like we did back then?
Well, Joe, I think just following up with the theme of World Radio Day this year, I think it talks about evolution, it talks about connection, and it also talks about this new technology, which is what has led to a lot of players coming into the game. I think that first of all, I have to say I love the challenge. It comes with a lot of disadvantages, like you're talking about fake news, because I can just decide from my bedroom or from my car to pass on any sort of information. But knowing the background of being a broadcaster and a media person, you know that there are rules and regulations of passing out information. But now, because it's easy for people to do that, it means that the new players who can do it from anywhere at any time, as long as they've got the equipment, as long as they've got the connectivity. But what does it mean to us, the conventional players? It means it's a new challenge, and it means that we have to up our game. I know that for sure. Whatever happens on social media, people always go back to the traditional radio, to the traditional newspaper, to the traditional television, to just to verify. But then that does not make us as strong as we used to be. So what it means is we need to integrate the social media. We need to integrate the new technologies on top of what we have already, which is what people believe in. So it's a new challenge, but all it tells us that is the world has changed, and we also need to move with the change.
The world is indeed changing, and we need to move with the change. You remind me of the statement that I just shared with the other guys here, that you know what, radio stations and big corporates or big TV stations need to tap into these other platforms to augment, to play along, and not to compete. They just, as Violet had said earlier on before you came in, she says they don't need to change anything. They still need to be authentic, they still need to be professional, they still need just to be as journalists as they were back in the day. But then we use these other platforms to make sure that we reach out to more people, and we remain the big station and the radios and the big radio stations that we were back in the day. You are doing a lot of training at Zimpurpose, Mr. Lee,
Mhm.
and you're working with a lot of talent there. You're not only working with Star FM, you're working with Capitol FM, Diamond FM, Nyami Nyami FM. What are some of the things that you would love to see happening on radio with your presenters right now and going forward?
Sure, Joe. First of all, I think it's an honor for someone whose dream was to be on radio like 20 years ago to be given the opportunity to train the prospective and emerging presenters. And looking at 2001 when we started, um, and looking at 2021, a lot has changed, like we've alluded to. So I would love to see the new presenters also move with the changes. Back in the days, radio was a mystery. I remember one of my favorite presenters is late now, God rest his soul, Peter Johns. For me, it was a mystery, the man behind the speakers, the man inside the radio. And we would argue with my brothers and sisters saying, Dear Peter Jones, Murungwere, Agamira say and whatnot. But now you see radio has changed. When you go to the progressive nations, you see presenters have to be in the forefront. Presenters have to be on screen. Presenters need to be more visible. They need to be more active on social media. And that is exactly where I would love to see the presenters who are coming in now, even the older presenters, to move with the times, to be able to tweet, to be able to broadcast on Facebook, to be able to move with the new technologies, be on TikTok, be on all these platforms, so that your audiences can get to have a closer relationship with you, and radios become more interactive. I'm seeing a lot of growth in dual presentations, sometimes trio presentations, sometimes quad presentations, because it's about conversation. And the more you interact with your audiences, you have to have various and varying views in the studio that will augment or also complement what the different type of people out there are saying. So I would love to see presenters who are moving with the technology and more interactive presenters rather than presenters who choose to be in the background.
You are in a conversation with Violet, who, after about 10 years of leaving radio, decided to go back and do a part-time gig with Classics 263. And now, in fact, when we were having this conversation, she said, I started off and I was happy with the radio format because I had to speak behind the mic and nobody would see and know who I am. Now
Mm.
people have to associate the voice with the picture, with the video and stuff like. It almost feels like radio is now TV. And
Mhm.
when you do, you think you run the risk of at times having someone who is on a radio show but loves it for the TV aspect or the TV feel of it, other than the radio itself, or a radio personality who loves the medium radio so much so that TV will most probably disturb them, or being in pictures and videos and stuff like that.
Um, I think like it's moving with the times, Joe. And I think we have to now. Violet plays various roles. She's still a presenter. She's still a fantastic producer, but she's a PR person as well. So I think she can never run away from the fact that she has to be visible and audible at the same time.
Yeah. Vi, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, no, I do agree with this is what I was talking about, the challenges of that transition, and maybe just to put things into perspective for my good friend Leander, I was talking about the reasons why I went into radio like years back when we started together. Remember, I,
Mhm.
I I was a communicator at heart, but I also wanted that the privacy, the security of privacy that I got with radio,
Sure,
that I
sure.
can talk all I want, I can do whatever I want. But then when I walk in the streets the next day, nobody even knows it's me. It was okay then. It was okay then, but of course now we've grown up, we've developed into other people, and people have other expectations of us. So even the gradual changes in how radio is being delivered now are actually beneficial to the way we have evolved in our personal lives as well.
Mm.
Sure.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Violet, you've been with me 1 hour, 40 minutes. Mr. Lee, you just stepped in, I think, 20 or so minutes. So it will be very hard to try and maintain these 2 minutes in this, in this conversation. But thank you very much for coming. I'm going to give Vi the first chance to go ahead and almost share with us what the future holds for you in terms of radio broadcasting.
Well, the future is difficult to predict, but
What
we
you
do
would
what.
love for it to be like.
But what I would love for it to happen, you remember, through this other life that I live, I'm a PR person for a work that involves a lot of work with communities. And I've got this new passion for development communication, radio that has impact on the lives of the people. So you would see that as a radio presenter going forth, you would feel a lot of that coming from me. How do we develop people? How do people benefit from communication? Can we link people to people that matter through radio? Can we link people with development initiatives through radio? That's my passion now as a radio presenter. And actually, you would find, Kuti, is 75% of the reason why I went back to radio, so that I reclaim that space in people's minds, in people's hearts, that when I start talking of these development issues from whatever other fora, people can identify with me. So it's a win-win situation for me. I'm giving people the radio that they are used to, and it's also building into what I see myself as in the near future.
Well, good luck with that and all the best and happy World Radio Day to you, man.
Thank you very much. Happy World Radio Day to you too, Mr. K, Lee K. Happy World Radio Day.
Happy World Radio Day, Violet, and thanks so much.
Mr. Lee, it leaves me to give you this opportunity to share with us as well what the future holds. Violet says we cannot predict the future, but I'm sure you have a certain idea of what you'd love radio to be like going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think first and foremost, Joe, I would love to see radio grow in Zimbabwe. I think the most significant growth took place in 2012, where other radio stations were given licenses to operate, and the growth continues. I think very soon we'll have more community radio stations registered. But besides that, I would also love to see radio becoming very, very lucrative, not only to the business setup, but to the individuals who actually participate. I'm talking about the presenters. I'm talking about the technical people. I'm talking about the marketers. I do know that in other nations, radio presenters earn a very good living, and I think understandably so. It is a very critical part of the society, and I would love to see radio grow into that in Zimbabwe. I would love to see radio play a part in building the nation, in building the world. It is no secret that radio is part of development, but I would love to see it playing an even more important part in building Zimbabwe, shaping Zimbabwe, making Zimbabweans understand the power of unity, the power of working hard, the power of just coming together as a nation, and also now building a brand, Zimbabwe, that will be looked at across the world. And I would love to see radio being remembered and also being counted as having played a huge role in building brand Zimbabwe.
Powerful words, and it tells you're a trainer and one of those leaders. It shows you are a trainer. But thank you very much for coming in. I know we took you away from a lot of Saturday chores that you were doing, but thanks a lot for allocating the time to be with us on this wonderful podcast. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee.
Joe Mas, thank you so much, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. We got to catch up with Vai, we got to catch up with Busi and Valentine, and of course yourself and amazing technology. You are out there in SA, we are out here in Zimbabwe, and everyone is in different parts of Zimbabwe, but we managed to catch up. Thanks for the noble initiative, Joe.
Thanks a lot. And if you have been listening to this podcast, we are celebrating World Radio Day 2021, and this is the 10th edition of these celebrations. Remember, in 2011, member states of UNESCO adopted the United Nations General Assembly in 2012 that, you know what, on this February 13, let us commemorate and celebrate World Radio Day. And since then, we've been doing this powerful media. Celebrating humanity in all its diversity is a very powerful tool. And I think we all need to just continue celebrating it on a day-to-day basis. If you've been listening to this, thank you very much. It is the Joe Mars podcast. My name is Joe Mars. And until we meet again, it is goodbye.